Hey, what's going on? Ryan Faulkner here at Triathlon.com, and we're going live to discuss Ironman Des Moines 2022 and how it went and what I thought of the event overall. Now, disclaimer: I am an Ironman University certified coach, but I am not an Ironman employee, so in no way, shape, or form am I obligated to say anything good, bad, or different about Ironman or its events. So, what you're going to hear about is just kind of my experience. I'm going to go over my stats. We're going to compare it to kind of the course information, see if elevations match up, all this kind of fun stuff, and just the little tips and nuances. Now, this is the first time they did a full in Des Moines, 2021. They did a half, and they're going to revert back to 2023 being a half. But if you look at the Ironman Des Moines website, they've got a little to be determined. So they may or may not bring it back. It will be interesting to see if they try to bring back a full and do a full back in Des Moines. Maybe they bring back a full later in the year or something like that, do it in the fall or something. Who knows what's going to happen with that, but we're going to talk about the full Ironman distance race in 2022, and some of the stuff will probably carry over into the race in 23 and what they've learned about the course and logistics and things like that. So we're just going to take it from beginning of race day, and we're going to go click on the athletes. Then we'll do the event schedule because it's got a nice little map that kind of lays out everything that happened on race day, and I'm happy to share it with you. Oh, that's not good. We'll bring back the map and everything. For some reason, we had a little glitch in the matrix or something going on. I think we're still there. I'll make sure we got you guys pulled back up on Facebook. I think we're still live. We're going to carry on like we're live. So, going back to it. So, I'm going to pull up the event schedule because on the event schedule, it conveniently has a kind of a map layout of the transition situation because it was a little bit of a larger area as far as it was one transition race. However, the transition finish line, Ironman Village, parking, swim start were all in kind of different locations. So it's a little bit of a logistic issue getting everything where you need to be, get yourself where you need to be. So race morning, we stayed at the Renaissance Des Moines, Sabre Hotel. It's very convenient. It was just right across the street from Ironman Village. Saved a lot of time as far as driving, parking, walking, check-in, and all things connected to doing anything with going to the athlete briefings, going to the welcome ceremony, anything like that happened at Ironman Village at Cowles Commons, and it was just super convenient to stay right there. It was a little bit more of a premium to stay kind of downtown, but for the 2021 7.3, I stayed south of town, and it took a little bit of time just to go park, walk, and do check-in and all that kind of stuff. But they changed some logistics because I will say bike check-in, they let us park on the little access road right by transition area before we had to park in Spill Avenue Business Center and walk our bikes over, and that's about a mile and a half, so it was a little bit of a hike to take all our stuff there. It took some time out of the day. It was nice. They let us park right by the transition area, walk all our stuff in, and do the check-in. So that was kind of nice and convenient. Nice change. Hopefully they keep that for 2023. But on race day, we stayed right here at the hotel. They had shuttle systems going from Cowles Commons, Ironman Village, to the transition. They also had shuttles at the parking area going to transition as well. I don't know how the shuttles went from parking, but we did the one from downtown. So that was pretty convenient to be able to just hop on the bus. I think it started at 3:30. We got there about 4 o'clock and went with my daughter. They did separate athletes from spectators. But in my opinion, when we got there, there was plenty of room, and there was not really a line for athletes, and they were kind of waiting for athletes to fill the bus. They could have let spectators on, and I think eventually they started to, as my daughter finally caught her shuttle and caught me there in transition. We made sure that we got a meeting point. So that kind of fixed itself because I don't think there's a big, huge wait because there's two places that people could park. They got people from downtown. They're either staying there or parked down there, or they got people from the parking lot. But I believe there's maybe around 1,100 athletes that checked in for the race. So it's not your typical 2,000, 3,000 people race. So logistics are a little bit different when you don't have as many people necessarily to cater to and get to the race site. So just keep that in mind that if they bring it back and maybe it's a little bit bigger, or the 70.3 has more athletes in it, potentially could become a little bit of an issue. Um, just the logistics if there's that many more people. But like I said, Charles started at 3:30. Transition opened at 4. We got on the buses at 4 o'clock. We got straight there. Got in transition plenty of time to check my bags, check my bike, get everything situated, use the porta potty, do whatever I needed to, and then kind of hang out and met up with my daughter and walked to the swim start. So shuttles were pretty good, and allowed plenty of time, but it was different too. I mean, if you go to the event schedule, uh, pros start at 5:30 and age groupers start at 5:45. So 5:45 age group swim start. So that was just interesting because that is a lot earlier than usual. So I just say that because this race they started us a little bit earlier, which hey, I'm fine with. It ended me a little bit earlier than usual. You know, it was a little bit longer race for me because they get a little bit warm, but it was nice that you started a little bit earlier and ended earlier today, so you're not dragging it out and you're not to the end of the evening, and then Monday you got to get up and pack all your stuff and get out of town or whatever you're gonna do. So it's a little bit nice to I mean, you got up early anyway, so what's an extra half hour, 45 minutes or whatever? You know, I don't sleep the best anyway the night before, so that didn't really hurt my feelings. I actually appreciated a little bit earlier start. That was kind of nice, and there's plenty of sunshine. When you get there, transition at 4:15, 4:30 or something like that, it was a little bit dark. But they had enough lights there. And there was enough other people running around with headlights. There really wasn't a problem to see. And the sun came up well before the pros started, so there was plenty of light to see what was going on. There really wasn't any issues with that. For the swim start, they had us, and I'll do a little video about the transition area and the kind of different route they had us take for the entrance and exit. So in the 70.3 and 21, they had us come up on the north side of Waterworks Park and then walk across the street to Grays Lake Park. And then they had us over in this little, if you can see where the mouse is, this little swim beach area, and that was the start. And then we swam a rectangle and we finished in Grays Lake Park. Well, for the start and the finish were in the same spot here in Grays Lake Park. So they had us walk underneath the tunnel that was our entrance into transition in 21. So for 22, that is where we walked and we gathered along the path here to start the swim, rolling swim start. Really, I was kind of worried when you go in there and you do the swim. Let's see if we can pull up quickly. Hopefully, pull up the swim course. So as you can see, it's a 2-loop swim and it's a rectangular course. And you go over this little peninsula deal. It was going to be interesting. I was just kind of curious how all this was going to work out. What is it going to be crowded, 2-loop swim? How this little peninsula thing was going to work, sighting, all that kind of fun stuff. Luckily, it was cloudy, so there's no real sun to deal with per se for me personally. I probably lined up. I started around 6, so they started age groupers 5:45ish. 6 o'clock, I was in the water doing my swim. Really, there was not that much traffic to speak of. I mean, there was some. I think I lined up well with my swim times, and I was kind of honest about it, where I thought I'd end up a little bit over 110, and I did 111. So this, if you line up with your swim, they had signs up. If you kind of lined up with the right group, you're going to end up in the right place. And I swam a little bit wider of the buoys and didn't hug them as tight and let the faster people kind of go by. But really, I placed myself rather well, and it really wasn't. I didn't pass too many people. I wasn't passed by too many people. So it was, I think, a really good placement for myself. So really, I didn't have problems. My goggles were a little fogged up and greasy. I didn't clean them from the practice swim the day before, so a little gross. And by the time I got in the water, I didn't have anything to clean them with, so kind of had to deal with that. But it really wasn't a problem. I didn't have a problem sighting. I didn't have a problem. You know, there were a few times where you got some traffic and congestion, but really, and going over this little peninsula, it's kind of a nice little break. I put my goggles up and just kind of was able to kind of collect myself, and it was like 50 yards or something like that. It wasn't crazy. They had AstroTurf over it, so there's nobody tripping. They had water. I grabbed some water, just washed my mouth out, and then completed the rest of the swim. So really, the swim wasn't. I didn't think it was a problem. It was nice. It was one of my fastest swims, my second fastest swim behind Ironman Florida in 2017, I believe. Pull up my Garmin Connect here. Unfortunately, it's taking a minute. Bear with me. But anyway, the swim, I did it in an hour and 11. And like I said, my fastest is an hour 10, so I was a minute off. It was wetsuit legal. The water, I think, was like 73, 74 degrees or something crazy. So it'd been warm leading up to that, but Grays Lake did not warm up fast enough. It was totally wetsuit legal. In 2021, the 70.3 was wetsuit optional, so the water was actually kind of warmer then. But it was also, the weather was wacky at this time of year. Usually Iowa is not this warm, and the forecast was a 78 degrees about a week out. And then a couple days before, it was like in the 90s. Then race day, I think it got up to 88. We'll see what the temperature says on my watch as far as run goes. But it was, the water stayed cool enough that it was wetsuit optional. Basically, everybody wore wetsuits. That's when I do my best swims. So you look at my swim data to see how closely I stay on course. So it was interesting. I mean, if you look at the swim course, it shows a nice little rectangular shape. The turn, it just seemed like we had to swim further out. I got 4,200 yards. So give or take or whatever, a little bit of veering, whatever. But I sight often just to keep track of those buoys, so it really wasn't a problem. And then the final swim, we just headed to shore. Really, I didn't have any problem sighting. I didn't have any problems finding the turn buoys. Personally, for me, it was a pretty textbook swim as far as that goes. So, just kind of curious. Bear with me while I check. Just kind of curious if I could see my pace when I run across 102 yards. Yeah, so you see my pace kind of picked up 106. So these little pace segments here. So that's when probably I'm running over the little peninsula or whatever. So it's not like a huge advantage. Let's see if we can reset it. So it's not a huge advantage, it's not going to, drastically increase or decrease. Now, if you go sprinting across that peninsula, it'll probably make you a little bit faster, but really, I mean, it's not going to add maybe another minute or two to your time. So this peninsula, I think, didn't really speed anybody up. A lot of people swam this faster than they thought they would. I think there was less traffic. There's only, I think, 850 finishers out of 1,100 people that checked in. I think the fewer people, and then you still had people to swim with. So if you put yourself in the right swim group, you had a nice little current, a nice little draft to swim in. So if I was passed or I was passing somebody, I was always kind of in a little bit of a draft situation. As long as I was sighting, I could swim around and didn't swim over them or get swam over. I think it was just a nice, good, let's say easy swim, but I had my wetsuit, I took the time, I didn't get crazy out there, and it really was not that bad of a swim. I like the swim. So thumbs up for the swim. Now, if they had 3,000 athletes out there, it might be a little different, but like I said, there's only 1,100 that signed up that checked in. So, and then only 860 or so that finished. So take that with a grain of salt that it was a little bit probably smaller field than maybe what we're used to in a full Ironman event. But once we jumped out of the water, we had to run across the little trails and then across the street, across through the drive, and then back into transition. Really, it wasn't that bad. They had wetsuit strippers, so I just peeled off the top. They peeled off the bottom, grabbed it, ran across the street. There's a few rocks and stuff, but really, it wasn't that big of a deal. It is long. Now, it is a little bit longer than usual, so running in there, and you hit the little grass walkway to get to transition, grab your bags, and they had changing tents this year. So you go in there and change, and then get your bike. You had to go get the bike, your own bike from the rack, and then take it to the exit. And then there was a little bit of a winding path to get to the bike start. So I wish I would have clipped my shoes in and just ran in my socks. It wouldn't have been that big of a deal. Just I had to jack with, I wore my shoes. Basically, I put my shoes on in the changing tent, grabbed my bike, and then ran it out and running across concrete and stuff. It's nice you run by the little VIP area, so if you get VIP, they get to sit there and wave at you, and they get to have breakfast. And my daughter did it; it was awesome. She got all the food she wanted. It's a nice little area. They had their own porta potty, and she could sit there and watch all the athletes go by and wave at. And he's like, "Oh, my breakfast burrito was awesome." And then you go out for a 112-mile bike ride. But I will say they allowed it, and I wish I would have put my shoes into my pedals. That way I wouldn't have to run in them, run through the grass, and then run through the sidewalks. It was a good little hike to get to the bike mounting line. So just a little thing I wish I would have changed is clipping in my shoes. No big deal. Not the end of the world. Everything worked out just fine. So basically, when you go out, you start on the trail system and you do your 112 miles biking in Des Moines. So it's a one loop course. So that's kind of nice. some people get bored with doing multiple loops. It is only one loop. Now, I will say for Iowa weather, let's see if we can switch over here. There we go. There's very little wind in the morning. It was cloudy, so it held off the heat. The sun popped out when I was about mile 70. My daughter actually hung out with some friends and spectators, and they saw us at mile 70. So when I saw her there, that's kind of when the sun kind of popped out and started warming up really quick. But basically, my average speed is probably not all that great. Being here in Kansas City, it's just hard to get outside more consistently and do longer rides. The weather's just not cooperating. So I got what I could in, but really for an early spring race, this is probably, especially this race, there was a lot of hills. There was a lot of elevation. I got, let's see if we can look at power. You can look at all my wonderful stats and everything. Sweat loss, timing, elevation. Here we go. So I got 3,700 feet, but if you look at the course map, I believe they report 4,500. Now, I believe 4,500. I would not say Garmin is the end-all be-all. 4,000, so it's 500 feet off. Garmin is plus or minus, so over a 112-mile bike ride, it could be a little bit of a difference. But, I mean, you're going halfway through, and it's just a constant. There's some false flats and just some soul-crushing moments where you're just like, it looks flat, but for some reason I'm struggling on this section. And you're averaging like 13 miles an hour or something goofy. And you're just like, this just doesn't make sense for me. But once you get past the halfway point, most of the longer sections are downhill. And then you have some nice sections, this little out and back in the Piedmontese 5-mile challenge or whatever. It really wasn't, the bike course wasn't horrible, but it'll keep you honest. If you are not getting your bike rides in outdoors and experiencing hills and climbs and elevation changes, if you're just riding your trainer and you're doing it easy peasy, you're going to struggle on this course. We got lucky. There was maybe a 10, 12 mile per hour breeze when we are getting to the tail end of the course. A little bit of a headwind, but nothing crazy. I mean, as far as the bike course goes, it did get warm on the last at least 30 miles for me. So if you weren't ready for that, the sun and the heat kind of getting to you, if you didn't have a plan for that, it was going to get you. And if you're over biking, it was going to get you. But if you went out there and stuck to your plan and scale it back a little bit, accounting for heat and making sure you're hydrating well and make sure you get your nutrition, it really was a straightforward course. Like I said, for me, 17 miles an hour, it's not my best bike split by any stretch of the imagination, but look at my power, let's see the temperature. So as you can see, the temperature, suddenly, we're in the 80s and suddenly it spikes the 90, almost 90s. So you could definitely tell when the sun came out. It was easy peasy, nice and cool. Nothing drastic or anything until about 70 miles for me, and then you come out and the sun popped out and really warmed things up. I mean, it got, like I said, the temperature on my watch got into the 90s, and you're in there in the afternoon, after noon, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, you're really getting into the heat of the day, and it got hot. It really, you go to the website, and the average air temperature is 71 degrees, and it definitely for the last 2 years, for 22 and 21, it has been way warmer than seasonal conditions. So if you are going to do even the half, I mean, it's going to keep you honest, so make sure you're prepared to do a kind of more of a tougher bike course, and just make sure you're prepared to be ready for the heat, have a plan for the heat, because these last 2 years, it's demonstrated that time of year can get kind of warm. So it was kind of tough in that regard. But if you want to see my power information, all this kind of stuff, basically, average power is 172, normalized power is 180. So 200 watts is usually my normalized power for long bike rides. Like I said, towards the end, I kind of eased off a little bit because I knew the run was going to be warm, it was going to be tough, and I did not want to take any chances. Now, as far as the course goes, aid stations were excellent on par. Now, one aid station, I forget where it's at. It was like the bottom of a hill. So if you stopped, then you had no momentum to basically bike up this monster hill. So I wish they maybe would have put it at the top of the hill or something like that, so you had momentum if you just wanted to grab something and go. But The aid stations were on par. The special needs at mile 56 was perfect. That is the only point that I stopped to get special needs and to stretch my back and get back on the course. Really, I mean, the only thing that really pops in my mind, there's a few sections here, maybe I think on Raccoon River Road. It was concrete, and the joints, they definitely started coming up and coming apart. So, I mean, it was like some of them were a little bit of a drop. So it was just like every 10 yards, it's like thump, 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 thump. It was just monotonous for a while and kind of got to you. But there's a little bit of sections of chip seal, but I would say like 85% of this course is in pretty good shape. It was not rough. Um, like I said, the only sections were just a little bit of where the joints in the concrete had kind of come up and heaved over time. It was just like a little drop every time, every 10 yards. It was just kind of relentless for a couple miles. But once you got past that, the roads are pretty good. Compared to like Tulsa, Chattanooga, I think they've recently repaved their roads, but they were getting kind of rough, potholes and all kinds of fun stuff, chip seal. But very little chip seal. Like I said, the concrete little sections are the only thing that I would kind of warn people about. They're probably not going to go out and change anytime soon. So for 23, for the half, probably going to run to that a little bit. But overall, nothing really pops in my mind as far as they could change this or do this a little bit different for the bike course. I think it was as good as probably could get doing a full Ironman out there in Des Moines. Really well supported. I always saw bike techs running around all the time. They're trying to get to people as quick as possible. The aid stations, they had plenty of supplies. They had plenty of volunteers. Really, I think the bike course was pretty smooth. I really didn't see anybody having that many problems with it. Didn't see too many flats. Didn't see too many issues going on or people on the side of the road crashed or anything goofy like that. Like I said, with 1,100 people, doing a check-in and then only 860 finishing, I think the field was a little bit small. So there are sections where you're just kind of out there by yourself for a little bit of time. So you're doing your own race. So as long as you had your plan and you could stick to it, really didn't have anything to worry about. And traffic wasn't an issue like locals. There's a few times where some local people didn't appreciate us being out there. But for the most part, people came out. They're on their driveways. They're cheering you on. They're watching you. Thinking you're a moron for out there biking in this heat and conditions. But hey, that's what we're out there doing, right? So really, I think I like the bike course. It'll keep you honest. So if you don't train for hills, you don't get ready for being outdoors, you don't get ready for heat, a little bit of wind, you could pay for it a little bit. But overall, I liked it. I thought it was a good course. I thought it was nice and challenging. There's definitely nothing easy about it. But it's definitely not a monster killer course out there. It's no Lake Tahoe with 8,500 feet of climbing on it. So once you get back into transition, so you ride your bike in and you ride here on the back part, they had bike catchers, so you had to walk your bike past the dismount line and down the little chute into the grass, hand your bike off, so you could either keep your shoes clipped in, or I went ahead and took my shoes off before I went into the grass area, carried my shoes, carried my bike, and then gave my bike to one of my athletes that was there doing the volunteering, which was awesome. So she grabbed my bike, I had my shoes, grabbed my bag, went back into the changing tent, and changed for the run. Came out, used the porta potty, and then hit the run course. So you come out, you run through the little tunnel, and then you're off and running around Grays Lake. Now, this is where it got interesting. So by itself, the run course, let's see if we can go catch it real quick. And while I'm doing this live, I've got the tools pulled up. So if you got any questions or anything like that while you're doing it, maybe you're going to do it the 70.3 in 2022. And for the 7.3, it's basically the same course, except this little section down here to see the mouse is cut off, and you're only going out here to this U-turn and back. This little addition is for the full, and that was a soul-crushing part. I'll be honest. So when I came out to transition, I was feeling decent. I knew it was getting warm. I knew I was going to pay for it later on and have to manage that. But I tried as much as possible, maintaining a sustainable pace, trying to get fluids in, trying to get hydration in, trying to manage any kind of GI discomfort, distress. But basically coming out, there was already people collapsed in this little park area with trees alongside the path that had gone out way too hard, probably on loop number 2. and he was already in the grass laying there. So that was not a good indicator that the day was going to be easy on the run. Let's see if we can pull up the temperature for that. We'll let that pull up. So coming out this backside during the middle of the afternoon, there is no shade whatsoever. Maybe a little bit of shade. You're running through the little park area here. There's a little bit of shade. But once you get on these back trails, the sun was right overhead and beating right down on the path. I wish there was some way that somebody, Ironman or anybody, could have put shade barriers for that whole run route, because that you hit that in the first mile to 2 miles to 3 miles. So 2 miles is a turnaround here. If you go out too hard and you're feeling good because you still have energy, and you go out there and you spend it all in the heat, you're gonna pay for it. So, I know athletes that are good, solid athletes, and they're already looking like ass when they came in. They're on their second loop, one of my first. You see come through the aid station, and they're walking. And these people don't usually walk. It's going to be a tough day. But basically, I came through aid station number 2. My goal was aid station, do a good little jog. So at the aid stations, I slowed down. My tri-suit is great from Team Zoot. It has an ice pocket in the back. It had pockets on the side of the hips. It had pockets on the inside, like a zipper top, so I could open it up and put ice in the pockets. And I put ice in the back pocket. So they got wise pretty quick. I think they made the strategic move, and I'm totally speculating, where they told people to not put ice in drinks, to keep ice out for athletes to grab and put in their hats or whatever they need to do with it. So the drinks were warm. There's some aid stations that had coolers and stuff that kept the drinks cool, but for the most part, if you grab one of the drinks, the Red Bull, the Coke, some water, Gatorade, sometimes it was warm and it was not good. But what they're doing was they poured the ice in buckets, and they just left it out for the athletes to grab ice. And I think that was the best strategy. Basically, at no time did I go through. There are some aid stations with a little bit of ice left, but at no time really was there a depletion of ice, where an aid station you go by and you're like, well, we don't have any ice. We don't have any water. They had plenty of water. They had plenty of Gatorade. Now, later on in the day, that might be an issue. I finished in 13:40. So maybe later on in the day, I don't know how that went. So if you were there later and you knew how that went, you can put a comment on the video. But aid station, about till mile 11 or 12. So you come through, do the first U-turn, you're coming through. And basically, when I hit probably mile 11 or 12, you came back into this back stretch. I knew it wasn't going to work. I knew I was going to face this whole long stretch in the sun, direct sunlight. And then when you come back around the lake, you're in direct sunlight, and there's some trees and shade. You come back from Fluid Drive, no shade to be seen until you get to this little underpass. And then basically you get no more shade until you get past the little park here downtown. And then you get some shade of the buildings. And it's a little bit of help with that. But you were exposed on this course, and it got hot. 88 degrees, but the humidity was insane. And people were, I've never heard that many ambulances running sirens to pick up athletes in a race. It was, and I've been in Chattanooga 2019 when it almost got to 100 degrees. And it just, there's more shade on that course, so I think that kind of helped. But let's see what so 96 degrees. And this is measuring the temperature from my watch. So when I started walking, I got the temperature back down, but my average temperature was 92.6 degrees. So in theory, you look at the course map and you look at the total elevation gain, about 500 feet over 26.2 miles. Really not that technical or difficult in itself, but when you add in temperatures close to 90 and the humidity in the 80s, it's just going to be rough. And it really took a toll. And the same thing happened 2021. It was really hot that day too. So maybe they need to update the temperatures, average air temperature at that time of year. But it was just hot. And basically mile 11 and 12, it became a strategy of running when there's shade. So basically I waited till there's shade, and then you can kind of see in my Garmin Connect here the pace. So every time you see me picking up a little bit, it was in the shade or I'm coming to the finish line. So basically we get here about 2 miles into the whole fair, and then it just becomes a situation of we need to dial it back, because A, there's a lot of people laying on the side of the road, and I didn't want to be one of those people. B, I needed to slow it down so I could take in fluids and actually digest. I didn't have GI issues. And C, there are moments where I started feeling a little bit dicey. heat stroke is real and people are having it. There's even stories of people having to be resuscitated in medical tent. I definitely don't want to be one of those, so you can definitely tell. Why just dial it back? Got the heart rate down, was able to take in fluids, getting the finish, and not going to medical tent was definitely more important. Didn't want to be one of the athletes that had to go there. It definitely wasn't worth for me. I was going to be in first place. I'm not vying for a Kona slot. I'm kind of more of the legacy approach, just getting the finish done in a decent time and getting to the finish line and not being to a point where I need to be carted off to a medical tent. Got to the finish line. I was doing fine. I was able to see my daughter. I was able to hug her at the finish line, able to talk to friends. They had insomnia cookies that was right there by the finish line, and had some ice cream from there. And I think it's just a better experience to be at the end and being able to kind of know what's going on, be cognizant and aware rather than trying to put the best time out there and possibly run yourself into medical. As far as the course goes, I'll look back at the run course. I mean, they had aid stations just about every mile. Like I said, the aid stations were stocked. I really had no issues. I think once they realized how hot it was going to get and how difficult people were having of a time, they had ice. The only thing I wish there was shade on this little backstretch. There's nothing they can do about that, and it is what it is. But I wish there was more shade back there. Really, there's nothing that stands out in my mind of I wish they would have done this, that, and the other. The course markings were good. The pavement conditions were good. There was no issues with tripping over hazards or anything like that. The only issue, I will say, the bike course, we probably passed 4 or 5 pig farms. So rather, late in the race, that's difficult to ride by a pig farm and smell all the manure. A little tough on the stomach. And then when we're running downtown, and this is just a small gripe, you're running through and you're smelling like sewer smells or dumpster smells. That'd be the only thing, maybe try to find a way to get rid of the dumpsters or something like that around the run course, especially this little dip here. Seemed like there are some dumpsters hanging out over here, and especially in the middle of the day with 90-degree temperatures. That smells very good, but it is what it is. But overall, I mean, it's just small little things that maybe to pick on. Had it been normal conditions of set in the 70s or something like that, I think this would be a very fast course and very straightforward course. But this is, I think, where a lot of people kind of bit the dust is they went out too hard, especially first timers out there. They didn't know what to expect. They're just like going with whatever irritated they had coming out of transition, not realizing they probably needed to stretch it out as long as possible. I think a lot of people just ran themselves in the ground, especially in my third loop. I mean, there's just people, I actually saw people just stopping and just laying down on the ground. Now, I understand if you're not feeling good or whatever, and it's so appealing just to kind of stop. But once you do that, once you're on the ground and medical finds you, and it probably is going to be over at that point. So before you can get to that point, you need to come up with a strategy when you kind of realize you're like, okay, I'm slowing down and things are happening. Maybe I should slow down and get the heart rate down, get some fluids in, and just make sure I finish. There's no shame in walking, and I did plenty of that. So, I mean, you can look at my Garmin. It took me 5.5 hours to do the 26.2 miles, and I finished. So, average heart rate 113, but the average temperature was 92.6 degrees. I knew from 2021, when I saw the forecast, that probably was what it was going to be like. As well as like, it was not very comfortable, but just kind of how it had to happen, I guess. Welcome to the Midwest in June. It's unpredictable as far as the weather goes sometimes. So with that was kind of the end of my race. You can see my Garmin connector. Total was 13:41. Definitely not one of my fastest Ironman. Probably I think the second slowest, but second fastest swim. But I did a lot of things to kind of manage the day and the weather and the temperatures because I didn't want it to come away. I wanted to be functioning the next day to be able to come back to family life. So I didn't want to be just out of commission. And here I am a couple days out, and I'm kind of back to normal. I'm a little bit sore still, but still doing my rides and doing other stuff and functioning in the family and, kind of back to life as normal. But I will say, so once you come to this finish line, you had to walk 2 blocks over to Cowles Commons. And that's where kind of the Ironman Village was. So that's where the food was. And it was interesting because, let's see if you can see the title sponsor here. So the title sponsor was Certified Piedmontese Beef. And at the finish line, they had veggie burgers and hot dogs. And then they had the grapes, raisins or whatever, bananas, and chips, and everything they had on the course for finish line food. I'm in Tulsa in 2021. They had beef burgers, they had I think bratwurst, they had some other things, but oh man, I was so looking forward to that beef hamburger at the finish line. They're like, all we got is veggie burgers. That was a disappointment. I wish I would have taken my daughter up on the offer. She would have gone back in VIP and got me like some chicken fillet or something or other. So had my hot dog. Did get my free massage, so there wasn't much of a line to get your free massage. Kind of hung out in the Ironman Village, and then we walked back across the street to our hotel, and I showered up and kind of passed out after that. So, a couple little nuggets. I wish, like I said, most Ironman races have pizza at the finish line, and it's okay. But they had veggie burgers, which I didn't really want a veggie burger at that point. I wanted like a real greasy hamburger, and unfortunately, they didn't have it. I could have swore they mentioned it at athlete briefing, but it wasn't there. And then they had hot dogs, and the hot dog was okay. So I wish the finish line food would have been a little bit better, a little bit more appealing. Other than that, I mean, like I said, they had plenty of massage people on hand for all the finishers. It only took about 10-15 minutes to wait and get the massage, and then we got the finish line food, and we headed to the hotel. So really, overall, the big things you look at, you can't control the weather, so it is what it is. You just kind of have to deal with it. The venue, the swim, actually worked out pretty well. So if we look at the swim course, I thought it would be a problem, but with only 1,100 people registered, it really wasn't that crowded. Like I said, it was my second fastest swim, so really not much of a problem. Now the transition is, let's see if we can pull up. I mean, it is a bit of a hike to get from the swim finish to transition, and transition to the bike start, and bike finish to transition, and then out of there. It added, if we look back at my Garmin, I did a total of, let's see what it does on the day here, 141.2. So Ironman's 140.6, so it added 0.6 miles-ish, whatever, plus or minus, because Garmin isn't 100% accurate all the time. So the transition is long, but it's one transition race, so it really wasn't a big deal. The bike course I thought was pretty good. Like I said, there's a few little sections of pavement that were not the best, but I've definitely ridden on worse. And so this kind of is, I think, it's a good challenging course. If they bring it back and they do the same kind of course, I think it's really doable. It's challenging, so you're gonna have to do your homework and make sure you do your training. But it's doable. It's not totally impossible, especially if you maybe miss some rides or something like that. So that's the main thing. And then maybe the aid station at the bottom of the hill, maybe move it up to the top of the hill. That'd be my only suggestion for that. And then, the little section here in the park wasn't bad either. There's paved trails. It really wasn't that busy, just because there wasn't that many athletes running around. So that wasn't that bad. And the run course, I really liked it because it's 3 loops. So I saw my daughter a couple times. Like one time she was in VIP 10, so I missed her at the turnaround and U-turn. But I think it was really good because there's spectators. This little park here was just packed with people and spectators along the back trail here. It was nice because the aid stations and spectators kind of had shade from the trees, but the trail was in the direct sunlight, so that kind of sucked. But there's tons of support. The aid station by Diamond Bikes, and TJ Flaxen, it was, they were just hopping. They had music going, karaoke, all kinds of stuff. There's plenty of energy all around the course. There's people everywhere at this little park. They had like people and a little band playing, and then special needs bags were here, and then the aid station underneath the bridge was good. And then running through downtown, there's a few sections actually that were kind of barren through downtown, but once you got here in the buildings, it was pretty packed. And into U-turn, there's people everywhere. I really liked it because it was a condensed area, even though it's 3 loops, and you get kind of tired of, you hit that U-turn for the second time, you're like, oh, I got to do another loop. I really like it for the spectator advantage because all the people are there, and they can see you several times throughout the course. And this little park area here was great. I mean, people were just going crazy nuts. They put up sprinklers downtown. They opened one of the fire hydrants so you could run through it if you wanted to. So that really helped out. And the aid stations, they were ready for the heat. They had ice, they had plenty of ice, at least while I was running through. And like I said, I got done around 7 o'clock, so I really didn't have any problems with the aid stations not being supplied and ready. Maybe the drinks were warm, but I think they were using the ice for the athletes and not necessarily keeping the drinks cool. So you could get ice in a cup and pour your drink in there, and that would suffice, but just saying. Um, so I like the run course. It's when it's hot, yeah, it's gonna be tough. But even run course is gonna be hot or tough when it's that hot. So really, I don't have anything negative to say about the run course. The only finisher's food, I think that's a gripe of a lot of people. Is just I wish we had different, better finisher food. I'm in Florida a few times. They've had like fajita type stuff, and you can make like a fajita or a burrito or something like that. It was kind of different fun. But anyway, so the finish line area, you did have to walk 2 blocks, but as long as you didn't totally wreck yourself, it's not that big of a deal to walk over there and get your food, get a massage. But then to get back to transition, they had shuttles over here at Cal's Commons, so you had to ride a shuttle back to transition. They were taking bikes back, so if you like stayed downtown, you could put your bike back on the shuttle and get all your stuff back here. But the line, when I was doing my third loop, the line was like 15 and 20 people deep, so it was going to take a while. And I was fortunate enough, my friends grabbed my stuff and put it in the hotel for me, so I didn't have to go back and mess with that. But they had it set up that shuttles, Cal Common, to get you back to transition, get your stuff. So if you had to go back to the parking lot, they had shuttles getting you there. If you had to go back to downtown, to Cal's Commons, they had shuttles getting you there too. So they took care of a lot of scenarios, I think, that they learned from the 21 70.3 race they did, and to get you back to the finish line areas. So I would imagine they're going to incorporate those shuttles, especially if they want to keep the Ironman Village out at Cal's Commons, and we're putting transition here at Waterworks Park and having the swim at Grace Lake. I think they're going to have to do that in order to just, if you're staying downtown, that's a long hike. We actually walked it to the swim practice on Saturday, and it took about 30 minutes for my daughter and myself to walk it over there, and we were not being pokey about it. So it's a long hike to get down there if you want to walk there and walk back on race day if you're staying downtown to stay close to Ironman Village. If you want to stay, there's a few hotels that are a little bit closer, like Holiday Inn, but those sell out fast, and I think that's where Ironman has their headquarters. I don't know, but it was sold out, so it made it kind of difficult. So I think if they have shuttles from Bell Avenue to over to Transition, they change where you can park along the access road to check in your bike and your gear the day before the 70.3. I think that will help out a lot. So I think they've learned a lot from this race, and I think they've extended for 3 more years to at least do the 70.3 there. Now, you go to the full Ironman course, it's got to be determined, so they may or may not have a full there again at some point, but they've done it. They proved they can do it. The timing, usually June this time of year in Des Moines, Iowa is not this hot and humid. So what are you going to do? I mean, the weather is going to do whatever the weather wants to do, so they can't really control that. So maybe they change the dates or something like that for a full in the future or something like that. But overall, I know I talked a lot, and if you stayed with me through the whole thing, I appreciate it. So that's my experience. And this was my 10th Ironman race. This was by far not my second fastest swim, but probably second worst time. Just that heat just took it out of me, and especially, like I said, this little section on the run course, this back little half, man, you're in full sunlight. You're hitting that the first 2 loops for full sunlight. The third loop, you finally started getting some shade, but that was rough. That, especially hitting it first, just kind of took it out of you, and then you hit Fluor Drive. There's no shade except for this little tunnel until you head downtown. It's soul crushing if it is 90 degrees with 75, 80% humidity or something like that. So that's the only thing, like I said, you can't control the weather. But so hopefully this helps you out a little bit. I like to do these videos so you kind of know an experience of maybe an experienced athlete, or if you're doing this for the first time, kind of what to expect out there. Be ready for heat. I think we got lucky on the wind. It's usually a little bit windier in Iowa at this time of year. But other than that, I mean, it's not an insurmountable course. It's not supremely difficult. It was well run, I think. Just few minor little tweaks here and there, and I think they've got a pretty good event going on. So hopefully this helped you out, and I'm going to wrap it up. And if you got any questions, put them in the comments. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up. If you watch on YouTube, give it a like, subscribe, hit the notifications, get future videos on this or other events. Putting together a course of all the videos that I made for Des Moines. It's applicable to the 70.3, or if they do a full again. If you have any comments, put them in the comments of Facebook, YouTube. I get notifications. I'll answer your questions. Maybe it's something I can add to a video later in the future. So with that, we still got a whole full season going on at the time of this video in June of 2022. I've got 2 more full Ironman races to do. So happy training out there, and we will see you at the finish line.
From Kansas, Ryan, you are an Ironman.
Yay, Ryan!